رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي فطر خلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته، والصلاة والسلام على الإمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين جد الحسن والحسين، الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، والذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أما بعد، يكون الله في كتابه الكريم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا ولا يتخذ بعضنا بعضا أربابا من دون الله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
For the hastening of the reappearance of the Master of our time, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You find that the day of the 2nd of Muharram just passed. That this caravan, it has arrived in the land of Karbala upon this day. That a transformation is taking within the land of Karbala. That it's changing from a land of trial and tribulation to a land of peace, a sanctuary of healing until the day of judgment. And you find that from this land of Karbala upon this day which just passed, that Karbala became a lamp of guidance, that from over here, that lamp which was dimmed, it was re-enlightened upon this day. And Rasulullah has his famous hadith, which every child has heard, every individual in this hall has heard. Innal Hussain misbahul huda was safinatun najat. That Hussain is the lamp of guidance and Hussain is the ark of salvation. And when you have a lamp, you have a dark room, you place a candle within that room. Whether you believe there's a candle there or not, you find that every single person, he benefits from that candle. There's some individuals, they'll be so close to that candle that they'll feel the heat of that candle. They will feel the essence of that candle upon them. But then there will be some people who are in the farthest part of the room. That light may be dim, but they still see that light. But for them to see that light, you have to get them to come within the room. And that's why the subject of today's majlis is opening the door of interfaith dialogue through Imam Hussain, salamullahi alayhi. That you find that we are opening this door through Imam Hussain, salamullahi alayhi. For Hussain ibn Ali is that door that Allah has even written upon his arsh that Hussain is misbahul huda and Hussain is safinatun najat. And you find that this topic is very important within our societies for two reasons. Number one, we live in a metropolitan society, that we interact with individuals who are not of the same faith as us, that we may have interactions with somebody who is a Christian. We may have interactions with somebody who is of the Jewish faith. We may have interactions with people whom are non-Muslims. But you find that Imam al-Hussein has a level of humanity within his movement that relates to everyone. You know, I know it's a cliche line, but I don't say the word cliche for this thing because the truth, it never goes old. The truth, it never goes old. Even when you look within the Quran, the Mufassirin have mentioned, when the Quran says the word Al-Islam, it doesn't just refer to the religion which was revealed to the Prophet. No, within the Quran, Al-Islam means every religion which was in its time before it became corrupted. That in the time period of Musa, Musa's religion was Islam. Isa's religion was Islam. And you find Imam al-Hussein, he revived al-Islam, meaning he revived the message of all of the other religions. Because when you look at different religions within the world, you find that all of them have an esoteric reality which transcends. That there are certain dimensions of many religions that you will find that are common amongst different religions. So you find from the first aspect that you have this. But from the second aspect, the state of society is different than it was 1 year ago. That the state of society, many events have escalated within the past year. That within this time period, we need to seek to build that intellect. Because if your understanding of Imam al-Hussein and the message of Imam al-Hussein was the same now as it was 1 year ago, then there is a link which is missing and you need to reconnect that link. Because the more time goes on, the more our understanding of Imam Hussein and his message and marifat of him should build within our hearts. And you find when you look at the state of society today, that every time we see an attack going off, there are people that pray that, oh Allah, let that person not be a Muslim because it will bring more difficulties upon us. Now, this is injustice, no doubt. But how do we overcome this injustice? One of the ways we overcome this injustice is through the door of interfaith dialogue. You know, I know within this community, Maulana Mahbub Mehdi, who's a true gem for this community and for the communities of North America, that they have an organization, the Children of Abraham. I was informed about it. That over here, take your best to take part of that organization because the work they are doing is they're setting the future for our societies. They're setting the future for our communities. And you find that when you look, Imam al-Hussein, he relates towards everyone, that there are many points of mutual discussion that you can have, that when you look in Iraq, when the ISIS attacks were going on, you find that there were Christians who were taking refuge in the shrine of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When you look farther, that there are Hindus which go to the land of Karbala, that even in India, you know, India, they have 4 castes. And one of those 4 castes is the Brahmins. There's a sect of the Brahmins called the Hussaini Brahmins. You speak to those Hussaini Brahmins, many of them, they don't go to temples. You ask them, so okay, you don't go to a temple, you respect Imam al-Hussein, have you become a Muslim? They say, no, we haven't become a Muslim. We are Hussaini Brahmins, but we found that Imam al-Hussein is an individual who impacted our faith as well, so we respect him. And any discussion, before I get into my 3 points, any discussion involving Imam al-Hussein and involving interfaith dialogue, we need to examine what the Quran says about interfaith dialogue. For Imam al-Hussein is that individual who revived the spirit of the Quran. So we need to understand the spirit of that Quran. For wasn't it Imam al-Hussein, when his head was on a spear, he recites the ayat from Surah Al-Kahf. أَمْ أَحَسِبْتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَرُقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. That do you think the people of the cave and the inscription are an astonishing sign of Allah? I am reciting the Quran and my head is on a spear at that moment. So when you look within the Quran, you open this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Imam Hussain revived. You come in and you see chapter 3, verse 64. Within chapter 3, verse 64, what does it say? It says, قُلْ يَا أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَىٰ كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ. It says, say, O people of the book, come to a joint word between me and you. And what is that joint word? أَلَّا نَعْبُدُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَلَا نُشْرِكَ بِهِ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ. That joint word is what? It is saying that we will not take anyone to worship except Allah, and we will not ascribe partners towards Him, and then we will not take lords as each other for lords. That you look at the spirit of the Quran within this ayat, that the Quran is saying, O people of the book, come to a joint word. Further than that, when you go in the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 82, it says what? It says, وَلَا تَجِدَنَّ. It says, لَا تَجِدَنَّ. In this word, لَا تَجِدَنَّ, it has the lam of ta'qeed and the noon of ta'qeed for extra emphasis. It says that indeed you will find what? You will find أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً. That you will find the closest towards you in reciprocal love will be who? لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى. That you'll find the closest towards you in reciprocal love will be those who say we are Christians. And the bulk of my discussion, it'll rest around interfaith unity with Christian society. For living here in America, that is the other major religion over here. That is the main major religion. And this discussion, it'll take place on three premises. Number one, it'll be historical. That which figure in Christian theology do you find that Imam Hussain has many parallels with? Number two, what can we, the followers of Imam Hussain and Ahlul Bayt, offer the Christian world which they are searching for that nobody else on this planet can offer? And number three is what? That is what is Islam's perspective on social pluralism. So you find that the discussion, it'll take place in these three parts. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When one examines the life of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you find that Ahlul Bayt, they had many similarities with the prophets of the past and their incidents. And I made this a point of my last ashara where I analyzed Ziyarat al-Waritha. So I won't go into that in specificity. But when you look within the life of Imam al-Hussein, you find that there was a particular figure in Christianity whom every Christian reveres that Imam al-Hussein has many parallels with. That when you look within Christian circles and you ask them, how important is John the Baptist? Many of them will reply by saying that John the Baptist is the one who confirmed the message of Jesus. That John the Baptist is the one whom the tradition of baptizing, putting people in water to cleanse them, it started with John the Baptist. Because you know, every Nabi, every prophet needs somebody to confirm their message. In the same way you find that Rasulullah had who to confirm his message. When you look within the Quran, chapter 13, verse 43, it says, وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَسْتَ مُرْسَلًا قُلْ كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ. It says what? It says when the disbelievers say that you are not a prophet, say enough between me and you is the fact that Allah is a witness and the one who has the knowledge of the entire book. That Allah is witness one. The one who has the knowledge of the entire book, Amir al-Mu'mineen, is witness two. And that's why when they asked Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali, what is your greatest virtue? If I asked you in this hall that what do you like about yourself the best? You know, people, they'll take 5 minutes, they'll take 10 minutes, they'll think about it. You know, I have all these things within me. What do I like the best? That Ali, that if the oceans were inks, and the trees were pens, and the jinn were counting, and the human being were writing, his virtues would not run out. You're asking that Ali, what is his greatest virtue? Amir al-Mu'mineen replies by saying, this verse is my greatest virtue. For in this verse, I was mentioned right next to Allah as the witness for the prophethood of Rasulullah. So you find that every prophet needs a witness. And within Christianity and Islamic circles, the witness for Hazrat Isa was who? John the Baptist, Hazrat Yahya. And when you analyze the historical text, you'll find that there are many parallels within these two. Of course, nobody can feel the pain of Abu Abdullah, but there are comparisons which can be made. For example, when you look at both of these individuals, you find that John the Baptist was born prematurely, 6 months. Imam Hussain was born prematurely. Number two, you find that the Quran says what? The Quran says, Ya Zakaria, inna nubashshiruka bi ghulamin ismuhu Yahya, lam naj'al lahu min qablu samia. That, O Zakaria, we are giving you good news of a son whose name is Yahya. None before him was given this name. You find that none was given the name Yahya before John the Baptist. In the same way, nobody was given the name Hussein before Imam al-Hussein. Because the name Hussein is derived from the name of Allah Qadim al-Ahsan. That Allah is the doer of all good, and from that Hussein is derived. So you find that this is the second aspect. The third aspect of the life of Hazrat Yahya and Imam Hussain, and use this within your discussions. When you sit with the Christian, tell him that I have a figure by the name of Imam al-Hussain, whom under the plan of Allah went through certain parallels with Yahya. When you look over there at the third aspect, you find how was Yahya? He was murdered, but how was he murdered? You find at that time there was a king by the name of Herod. That king, he wanted to marry a girl who was not permissible for him. One narration states that it was his niece, the daughter of his brother. Another narration says it was one of his slave girl's daughters who was unpermissible for him. But whatever the narration is, you find that this King Herod, he starts asking the scholars of his land that, is this permissible according to the law of the Torah? They reply, all of them say yes, except for one individual made a stand to protect his Sharia, to protect his religion, and that was Hazrat Yahya. You find that Hazrat Yahya, he said no. The king, he decides, okay, I'll marry this girl regardless, even if he says no. The mother of that girl, she comes up to the king. She says, "O king, you want to marry my daughter? There is one condition. Bring me the head of Yahya." That bring me the head of Yahya. You find that Yahya, eventually Yahya, he was killed and his head was taken to Damascus. You find Imam al-Hussein had this parallel, that when he stood up against a tyrant, Imam al-Hussein was killed and his head, it was taken towards Sham as well, towards Damascus as well. And you find you continue analyzing the narration. When you continue analyzing the narration, you find what? You find the narrations, they mention that the skies, they wept for Yahya. That the skies, they rained blood for Yahya. In our narrations for Imam al-Hussein, it is mentioned the same. You know, many people, they ask, that is this metaphorical or is this literal when we say that the skies rain blood? When Imam al-Zaman says in Ziyaratul Nahiya that every morning, every evening, I cry tears of blood. Is this an expression that for pain, for grief? Ayatollah Mohsin al-Hakim, he was asked this question. You know what Ayatollah Mohsin al-Hakim said to the man? He said, start reciting Masaib. That man, he started reciting Masaib. Ayatollah al-Hakim, he places his handkerchief upon his eyes, then he shows him the handkerchief. He says, you are talking about the Imam, even I am crying tears of blood right now because I am at that level. That sometimes you reach such a level that you can begin to display things which are miraculous to other people, but it's not a miracle, rather it's your level of cognizance which you have. So you find that this was the first aspect of the discussion, that there is a historical connection. But the second aspect, when you begin to analyze textually, you begin to see that there is a void in the Christian world for something. That the Christians of today, they are craving the words of Jesus, son of Mary. You know, Thomas Jefferson, he wrote a Bible. He didn't write the Bible, but he extracted verses, and there's something called the Jefferson Bible. What he did was he went into the King James Bible, and all of those verses which were written in red, he extracted them and made him his own Bible. You know what those verses in red were? They were the direct words of Isa, of Hazrat Isa, of Jesus, son of Mary. That they were the direct words of Jesus, son of Mary. You know how many words came out? a total of 2,000 words. Jesus, he lived for 33 years. Every aspect of his life is chronicled. Every movement is recorded. You're telling me you only have 2,000 measly words about Jesus? You find the Christian world, it is craving for the words of Isa, the figure whom they live up to. And we, the Muslims, and the followers of Ahlul Bayt in particular, we can provide them knowledge about Hazrat Isa which is not available anywhere else. For when you look within the Quran, you find that Hazrat Isa, by the name Isa, is mentioned 25 times. By the name Masih, he is mentioned 30 times. There is an entire chapter named after the mother of Isa, Janabi Maryam, that she is the only woman mentioned within the Quran. It is only within the Quran that it is mentioned how Bibi Maryam, whom the Jews explained, who they accused of being adulterous for having Isa born, it is only the Quran that explains how she was exonerated from these charges. This isn't mentioned within the Bible. It's not within the Old Testament. It's not within the New Testament. It is only within the Quran that you find that the Muslims, that in Islam, we are that only religion which gave Jesus, son of Mary, a legitimate religious position. There is no other religion upon this planet except for the Muslims that gave Jesus a legitimate permission, a position. Because you find that at that time, Jesus, he was deemed a heretic by the Jews, but it is the Muslims who lended him support. And when you take this one step farther, and you go one step farther, you find that in the narrations of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, there is sayings of Jesus, son of Mary, that are available nowhere else. That when you look within the Sihah Sitta of our Sunni brethren, within those 6 main canonical texts of theirs, nowhere within those 6 texts is any saying of Jesus mentioned. But when you look within our narrations, there is narration after narration. For example, within our narration, it mentions the name of the mother of Maryam. This isn't mentioned anywhere else. And you find our texts are easier to trace historically than other texts. Why? Because when you look as an Orientalist and you are studying history, you know history is one of the hardest subjects to study. You don't know where it came from, whether it's accurate or not. But when you look within our books, we have a science of the chain of narrators, that this person heard from that person, who heard from that person, and it traces all the way back. That there is no doubt in our historical records if the chain is analyzed correctly. And you find that Ahlul Bayt, they provided this information. But the question arises, is that why did Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam make a point of mentioning Hazrat Isa, Jesus, son of Mary? You know, Ahlul Bayt, they didn't need to mention Jesus. And you prove this historically. When you look at that time period, who were the Muslims preaching to? It was mainly the pagans of Makkah, and it was the Jews of Medina. There wasn't a sizable Christian population over there. But you find that the Ahlul Bayt mentioning Hazrat Isa was not to solidify their position. Rather, it was an honor for Isa that Ali ibn Abi Talib would take his name. It was an honor for Isa that Imam al-Sadiq would take his name. It was an honor for Isa that Imam al-Baqir would take his name. Alayhimus salam. So you find this was one reason. The second reason is that Ahlul Bayt wanted to show that we are a continuation of the message of the prophets, because they are the inheritor of the knowledge of the prophets. You know, I remember after the Battle of Siffin, and the Battle of Siffin was against Muawiyah for the younger audience, that there was a group, the Khawarij, they decided to go rogue. They said, we are not going on Ali's side, we are not going on Muawiyah's side, we're going to fight our own battle. 10 of those Khawarij, they break off. They say to themselves, you know what? We're going to give Ali one chance. We're going to go and ask Ali the same question, all 10 of us. If Ali ibn Abi Talib can answer that same question in 10 different ways, then we will go join him. But if he fails to answer, we will go join the Khawarij. You find that these individuals, they go to the door of the city of knowledge. One by one, they begin to come out. They say, Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? You know what Imam replies with the first question? He says, knowledge is greater than wealth, for knowledge is the inheritance of the prophets, whereas wealth is the inheritance of Pharaoh, Hammam, Qarun. The second person comes up. He says, Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? The Imam replies by saying, knowledge is greater than wealth, for the one with knowledge has many friends, whereas the one with wealth has many enemies. The third person comes up. The Imam says, knowledge is greater than wealth, for the one with knowledge, for knowledge increases with distribution. That when you spread knowledge, it increases with distribution, whereas wealth, it decreases with distribution. The fourth person comes up. Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? The Imam says that knowledge is greater than wealth, for knowledge cannot be stolen, whereas wealth can be stolen. The fifth person comes up. Imam says knowledge is greater than wealth. Why? Because knowledge builds generosity within a person, whereas wealth, it builds stinginess within a person. The sixth person, Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? The Imam says knowledge is greater than wealth, for wealth, it deteriorates with time, whereas knowledge, it accumulates in depth over time. The eighth person comes up. Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? The Imam says knowledge is greater than wealth, for knowledge, it enlightens the heart, whereas wealth, it darkens the heart. The ninth person comes up. He says, Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? The Imam says ilm is greater, for knowledge cannot be counted, whereas wealth can be counted. The 10th person comes up. He says, Ya Ali, what is greater, knowledge or wealth? The Imam says knowledge is greater than wealth, for the one with knowledge says, Ma abadna haqqa ibadatik. Oh Allah, I did not worship you to the extent you deserve to be worshipped. Whereas the one with wealth says, Ana rabbukum al-a'la, that I have become your Lord, in the way that Pharaoh said it. You find that those Khawarij, they say, Ya Ali, we have decided to become your followers. The Imam said, why have you decided to become my followers? They say, because you answered the same question in 10 different ways. The Imam replies by saying that if you kept asking me the same question until the day of judgment, I would have kept answering that question in different ways. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I would have kept answering that same question until the day of judgment. But you find the first line, it stated what? It stated that the Ahlul Bayt were the inheritors of the prophets. Why? Because knowledge is their inheritance, and they had that knowledge. And that's why when you open the books of our narrations, you will find line after line of the sayings of Jesus, son of Mary, which are truly fascinating. For example, you find that one day Jesus, he's walking by, he's with his disciples. They see a carcass of a dog laying over there. The disciples, they say, oh Jesus, look at the smell and the stench of this dog, how foul it is. Jesus, he replies by saying, look at the whiteness of its teeth. That he teaches a lesson in positivity. You find another narration says what? A narration says of our sixth Imam that when Jesus, he would be able to walk on water. The disciples, they say, oh Jesus, oh Isa, how are you able to walk on water? He says, ذَلِكَ بِالْيَقِينَ بِاللَّهِ, that I am able to walk on water due to certainty in Allah. They say, we also have that certainty. Why can't we walk on that water? You know what Hazrat Isa, he replies by saying, he says that if you are walking by the street and you see a pearl and you see a stone sitting on the ground, what would you pick up? They said, obviously, we're going to pick up the pearl which is on the ground, which has value. Hazrat Isa says, the moment you don't care whether it is a pearl, a ruby, or a stone, that is the moment you'll have certainty. Because you will begin to look into the esoteric inward dimension of different things. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You will, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. You will begin to look at the inward esoteric dimension of things. And this is why when you look in Nahjul Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he speaks about Jesus, son of Mary. He says, do you want me to tell you about Jesus? That he used to wear rough clothes, that his companion was hunger. He used to use a stone as his pillow. That what else? That the moon used to be his lamp. That this is Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And these narrations and sayings are something which the Christian world, it is thirsty for. That when you have interfaith dialogue, do it through these discussions. Because you find that Islam is a religion which is very tolerant. Islam is a religion which is accepting towards others. When you look within the history of the world, you examine world history, you find that the last major transcendental religion across the world, which is global, is Islam. That when you look at world history, there were movements after Islam. They were localized, they were temporarily limited. But Islam is that last major religion to pop up across the world, and that is proof to the truth of Islam. That is proof to the truth of Islam. But the question comes up, if Islam has this level of tolerance, if Islam is the last major religion, then why is there so much violence in the name of Islam today? You know, there was a famous scholar, he would give this example, that if you have a medicine which comes out in the market, that this medicine, it can cure every type of illness, that you won't feel any sickness, you won't feel any problems after taking that medicine. What's the problem with this? Do you think everyone will be happy? No, everyone won't be happy. Why? Because there's going to be people that are being put out of business. There's going to be doctors that go out of business. There are people who are in charge of the graveyards that are going out of business. You find, so what do these people do in this hypothetical situation? They come together, they speak to each other that this medicine is putting us out of business. So what we're going to do is we'll create a vial, a bottle which looks exactly the same. The medicine will look exactly the same. But instead of being able to cure and heal, there will be poison mixed within this medicine. You find the same thing happen with Islam. When the truth of Islam was beginning to be spread, there were people who were losing social status. There were people who were losing their wealth. So what did they decide? That we will create an Islam, that we won't have any essence of it within our hearts. The Allahu Akbar will be the same. The La ilaha illallah will be the same. But instead of curing humanity, this Islam will be a poison to humanity. This Islam will be a poison to humanity. And today we are seeing an offshoot of that Islam in the form of these various terrorist groups, whether it is ISIS, whether it's Al-Qaeda, whether it is somebody else. And you find this is the reality of what has happened over time. And you find this Islam, when you begin to dive in towards it, when you look at the humanistic aspect of this Islam, you will realize that the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, they were very tolerant of other people. When the Prophet, he comes to Medina, he wants to establish the state of Medina, he creates the Constitution of Medina. That Constitution of Medina, it has 47 clauses. You know how many of them are about non-Muslim interaction? Out of 47, 24, the majority are about non-Muslim interaction. Within that constitution, it says what? It says that the Jew, he has equal rights within the Islamic State. He says that we will take the responsibility of protecting the Jew within the Islamic State. Line after line of tolerance. And this is what Ahlul Bayt have taught. This is what Islam has taught. Because when you look on the day of Ashura, that there were Christians who used to be Christian, but they came towards Imam Hussain. That look at Wahab al-Kalbi. That Wahab al-Kalbi, he was a Christian. His mother comes up to Imam al-Hussain. She says, give permission for my son to go out and fight. Imam al-Hussain, he's hesitant. He says, listen, that although this movement affected everyone, but this is a matter of the Muslims. She said, if that is why you won't let my son go fight, then I am ready to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That this is Islam. This is Islam. Islam was spread with love. Islam wasn't spread with the sword. It wasn't spread with hate, because hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can drive out hate. When you look in history, you find, you know how Rasulullah, you know how Ahlul Bayt brought people towards Islam? It was after one battle. There were captives who were over there. The other companions, they would go towards those captives. They would invite them towards Islam, but they wouldn't accept Islam. But then Amir al-Mu'mineen would go. They would accept Islam. They come up to Rasulullah. They say, Ya Rasulullah, when we invite people to Islam, they don't accept it. But when Ali invites people to Islam, they immediately accept it. At that point, Rasulullah says, why are you asking me? Go ask Ali himself. They come up to Ali, they say, Ya Ali, why is it when we invite people, they don't accept it, but you invite, they accept it? Ali says, why are you asking me? Go ask those Muslims themselves. When they go up towards those Muslims, they ask them this question. They reply by saying that you are those people who we saw running away in battle. But now when our hands are tied, you act rough with us. You think you are some hot shot. You think you are something big now, but that Ali, whom in battle we couldn't stand in front of him out of fear, when that Ali saw our hands were tied, he sits on the ground, he folds his arms, he says, let me tell you about Islam. I say to that Ali, oh Ali, we can barely stand in front of you, but right now you are sitting on the ground with this much humility. How strange are your ways. Ali ibn Abi Talib says, these are not my ways, these are the ways of Islam. He says, these are not my ways, these are the ways of Islam. And you find that today the days of Musibah are here, and I want to recite Masaib in length on these nights now. But you find that there were 3 martyrdoms which symbolize the 3 aspects of the movement of Imam Hussain, and I'll conclude on this point. The first martyrdom was the closest circle. The first martyrdom was the martyrdom of Hazrat Abbas salamullahi alayhi. For you find that Hazrat Abbas was the representation of his father Amir al-Mu'mineen. That Abbas, his mannerisms were like his father. When he would fight, it would be like his father was fighting. You know, on the day of Siffin, how Amir al-Mu'mineen came out. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he comes out on the day of Siffin. To his right side is Imam Hassan. To his left side is Imam al-Hussain. The narrator says, I asked someone that who are those 2 children? Who are those 2 young men next to Ali ibn Abi Talib whose face shines like the moon, that they have this light upon their face? The person replies by saying, that is Hassan and that is Hussain. Then he asks another question. He says, who is that young man behind Ali ibn Abi Talib? They say that is Muhammad al-Hanafiya. Then he asks one more question. Who was that one in front of Ali? The one holding the alam, the one who has eyes that if you looked at those eyes, you would stop in the middle of your tracks. They replied by saying that is Aba Fadl Abbas. That is Abu Fazl Abbas. You find Hazrat Abbas, he is fighting on the day of Siffin. His face is covered. Everybody thinks that it's Ali ibn Abi Talib who is fighting on the day of Siffin. You find as the battle is going on, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he walks out from the middle of the army. The confusion, it sets in that we are seeing somebody fight in the way Ali fights. Now we see Ali coming out from in the middle of the army. You know what Amir al-Mu'mineen says? He says, oh Abbas, take off that cover off your face and tell them who you are. He says what? He says, Ana Qamar Bani Hashim, Aba Fadl Abbas. That He says, I am the moon of Bani Hashim. And you find that this was Abbas who represented his father. And this was the first dimension. Imam Hussain, he was sending a challenge to the other side. That if there is any lover of Ali ibn Abi Talib on the other side, they will see Abbas and they will come towards his side. Because they will see that Abbas is on the side of Imam al-Hussain. The second level, which Imam al-Hussain challenged the other side, was through the martyrdom of Hazrat Ali Akbar. For Hazrat Ali Akbar represented Rasulullah in his morals and his facial figures. The people of Medina would say that whenever we would want to do the ziyarah of Rasulullah, we would go look at Hazrat Ali Akbar. This second shahadat was a challenge to the Muslims that if there is anyone with Islam in their hearts on the other side, then come towards my side. And this is the second aspect of his movement. The first aspect was for the followers of Ahlul Bayt, for the lovers of Ali. The second aspect is for Muslims. You know, somebody requested me to speak about intra-faith dialogue as well and Imam al-Hussain. Inshallah, in the upcoming nights when we have more time, I'll discuss that subject in one of the upcoming lectures. But the first most important point when it comes to intra-faith dialogue about Imam al-Hussain is what? Intra, not inter. Is that you prove that Karbala was a battle between Haqq and Batil and not a political battle. That you prove Karbala was a battle between Haqq and Batil, not a political battle. And inshallah, I'll mention that in later nights. But you find that this was the second level. But the third level of the movement of Imam al-Hussain is a movement for humanity. Christian, Jewish, anyone. This martyrdom, if you recite it in front of a non-Muslim, they will begin to cry. And that is his 6-month child, Ali Asghar. That if there was anyone on the other side with humanity within him, he would come and join the side of Imam Hussain. That this is who Hussain ibn Ali is. And you find that it is on this day, on that day which just passed, the 2nd of Muharram, that this caravan, it reaches the land of Karbala. It is that Karbala, that when Adam, he was going through this land of Karbala, Adam, he falls off the horse. He begins to bleed. He says, oh Allah, what is this land? I'm bleeding on this land. Allah says, this is that land where the grandson of the final prophet will be killed. You find that Ibrahim, he's giving water towards his animals as he's going past Karbala. He's doing it through the Furat. The animals, they stop drinking. He says, oh Allah, what is this strange land that the animals have stopped drinking from this river? Allah replies by saying, oh Ibrahim, that is that Furat which will deny the grandson of Muhammad water. You find Imam al-Hussain, he arrives in the land of Karbala. His horse, it stops to move. Imam al-Hussain, he changes his horse. The narration says that 7 times he changed his horse to confirm. But then he says that this is that land. Oh Abbas, this is where the promise of Allah will be fulfilled. He asks somebody that what is this land? What is the name of this land? They say it is called Ghazariya. He says, does it have another name? They say it's called Nehnawa. He says, does it have another name? They say Shattul Furat. He says, does it have another name? They say Karbun wa Bala. That this is that land of Karbala. You know, the moment Zainab stepped upon the land of Karbala, there was worry upon her heart. Her hijab, it slipped for a moment. She says, oh my brother, that where is this land? Let's leave this land and go somewhere else. Imam Hussain says, oh Zainab, this is that land where Allah's promise will be fulfilled. You know what the Imam does? He buys the land from Banu Asad. He says, oh Banu Asad, I want to buy this land from you. When the Imam, he buys the land, he says, I'm giving this land back to you. There are 3 conditions, but I'll mention the first. The Imam says, I know we will be killed. I know our bodies will be upon this land. But when we die, bury us in this land. Imam, he wasn't satisfied though. He says, call your women out now. When the women come out, the Imam, he says to them, oh women of Banu Asad, I am the son of Fatima. I am the son of Fatima, a woman of Banu Asad. When you go to the Furat to get water, put dust upon our bodies. But he wasn't satisfied. He starts speaking to the children. He says, "O children of Banu Asad, as you are playing upon this land, put dust upon our bodies." You know, it was upon this land that Bibi Zainab, she says, "Oh Bhaiya, oh my brother, ever since we came to this land, I hear a lady who is crying. She won't stop crying." The Imam says, "Oh Zainab, that is none other than our mother Fatima." Oh Zainab, that is none other than our mother Fatima. But right now Akbar is upon this land. Abbas is upon this land. Everyone is there. But a time will come on the 13th of Muharram. The bodies will be upon this land. No one would have buried these bodies. The women, the Banu Asad, they go to the Furat. They see that all of the bodies are there. They come back in. They say towards the men that you are sitting inside where the son of Fatima lays outside. They said that we fear Ibn Ziyad. The women of Banu Asad, they say that if you fear Ibn Ziyad, then we will go bury those bodies. They say that we'll bury the bodies. You know, when the men, they come out, they look at all of the bodies. None of them have heads upon them. They don't know where to place which body where. But at that moment, from the direction of Kufa, there came a man dressed in black. He walks between all of the bodies. He comes towards one body. He falls upon that body. It was Imam Zainul Abidin. He says, "Oh Baba, after you they put a chain on my neck. Oh Baba, they put ropes upon my arms. Oh Baba, they took the hijab. Oh Baba, they took the hijab of Zainab." Imam Zainul Abidin, he gets up. They begin to ask where to place which body. They bring the body of Ali Akbar. The Imam says, "Place it by his father, for his father loved Ali." Place it by his father, for his father loved Ali Akbar. They say, "Oh Zainul Abidin, there is a body by the Furat. When we pick one half of the body, the other half it falls. When we pick the other half, it falls." The Imam says, "That is the body of my uncle Abbas. Leave that body by the Furat." But then he says, "Oh Banu Asad, step back, for I have to bury my father." Imagine a son standing over his father's body alone. He says only a Masoom can bury a Masoom. He picks up the body of the Imam. He looks towards Medina. He says, "Ya Jaddi, Ya Rasulallah, adrikni." He looks towards Najaf. He says, "Oh my grandfather Ali, adrikni." He looks towards Baqi. He says, "My brother Hassan, adrikni." He picks up the body. He places it within the grave. Here's a voice saying that, "Put my Hussain down carefully, for the body is covered in wounds." على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Raise your hands, brothers and sisters, as we make this dua. For the narrations have said that when you ask dua during a time of musibah, Allah accepts that dua. And what greater musibah is there than the musibah of Aba Abdullah? You know, they say in narrations that if you ask through the right of the blood of Imam Hussain, Allah, He accepts your dua. Ya Allah, we ask through the right of the blood of Imam Hussain for the reappearance of the one who will avenge his blood. Ya Allah, we pray for the protection of the believers, whether they are in Iraq, whether they are in Pakistan. There was a blast today, there was one yesterday. Ya Allah, we pray for the rebuilding of Jannatul Baqi within our lifetime. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.